Hey YouTube, a massive balance patch has just dropped in Lost Goddess, and this one could completely reshape the meta. Bernice and Lavonne have both been nerfed, while several dominant mercenaries, including Skye, Lola, Moana, Natasha and Maddie, have lost a significant part of their power. But the biggest story may be the return of Infection. Bea and Inferna received the major reworks, while O-Rinn, Wendy and several androids now offer completely new scaling engines and synergies. Some changes feel perfectly deserved, others may have completely killed certain units. So today we are breaking down every major buff, nerf and rework, what they mean for the ladder and which character could define the next meta. Let's react to one of the biggest patches those goddesses have received this year. Let's begin with the two commanders currently shaping the ladder, Bernice and Lavonne. Bernice received another reduction to her burn damage. Her second skill lost 10% burn damage, while her fourth turn skill lost 20%. We have seen this type of burn nerf several times already, but this one makes sense in the context of the full patch. Skye and Cinta, two of the main tool uses to control burn, are also being nerfed. Without an adjustment to Bernice, weakening her main counters could have made burn even more oppressive. Reducing her burn damage at the same time free for feels fair and necessary. I still expect Bernice to remain strong, but she should not be more balanced without losing her identity. Lavonne, however, is being hit much harder. Her passive barrier value is reduced by 20%, and Sentinels no longer receive barrier from her passive. These affect a huge number of units, including Nona, Kitty, Keze, Skye, Falenia, Wendy, Justina and many more. These are often some of the most difficult units to remove from the board, so losing Lavonne's additional protection should make interacting with them much easier. Her first skill is also reduced, from 3 turns of healing to only 2. That is a major loss of sustain and give aggressive composition a much better opportunity to finish the game before Lavonne completely stabilizes. So while Bernice is being carefully toned down, Lavonne is losing a significant amount about durability. The question now is whether she can adapt with different units or whether this patch finally pushes her out of the top of the meta. Now let's move on of the top mercenary nerf, because some of them are even more brutal. Now let's move to the mercenary nerfs, because several of them could have an even bigger impact on the meta than the commander changes. We will start with Omega. Her first skill still heals the commander, but it no longer increases the commander's maximum HP. This is a very small change, and honestly, it feels logical. Omega keeps her healing wall without permanently increasing the commander heal pool. Skye, however, received a massive nerf. Her second skill now applies execution for only 2 turns instead of keeping it active until the end of the battle. Her fourth skill also gives the commander 15% less resistance. The nerf is huge, but I think it is deserved. Stall compositions could repeatedly deploy Skye and keep increasing the commander's execution damage. After Eno's turn, electrocution could literally one-shot entire board. Skye should still be useful, but she will no longer scale infinitely and dominate extremely long games. Lola is also being hit very hard. Her first skill no longer sets enemy range unit to a fixed 15 HP. Their HP is now set to 15% of Lola's maximum HP. Previously, Lola combined with almost any residual damage could completely wipe the enemy board. This chance should give range unit a much better chance to survive. Harper can now gain only 2 multi stack per battle by attacking the enemy commander. Personally, I think this nerf is harsh and probably undeserved. Harper needed time and repeated attacks to become threatening, and now her scaling is capped very quickly. Moana lost 15% of her HP, and her second skill no longer sets the attacker's HP to 1. It's now set it to 5% of Moana's maximum HP. This follows the same logic as the Lola nerf. Moana could combine with almost any small source of damage to guarantee a kill, and she was present in nearly every type of composition, so even though this is a significant nerf, I think it is deserved. Natasha may be the biggest loser of the patch. Her first skill now gives only 1 multi-attack instead of 2. Her second skill allows her to gain 1 additional multi-attack only if she kills a unit or a module. For me, this change may completely kill Natasha's role. Her immediate pressure was the main reason to play her. Now I struggle to see why you would choose Natasha over unit like Sunmi or Zelia. Cinta receives several changes. Her first skill heals for 10% less, but Antidote now applies to mercenaries. Her second skill deals 20% less AOE damage whenever an ally is healed. She also gains a new 4 skill at level 16, which applies Antidote to the commander. So the situation is simple. If your Cinta is below level 16, this is a meaningful nerf. At level 16, the commander Antidote compensates for most of the chains, and she should remain a strong anti-burn option. Finally, Maddie loses 50% of her HP, and the second skill now applies fire damage 3 times before attacking instead of 4. This is a real reduction to both her survivability and burst damage, but I don't think it kills the unit. Maddie should remain strong, especially in a burn and infection based composition, but her explosive turn will be more manageable. Overall, this patch directly attacks infinite scaling, guaranteed board clears and immediate multi-attack pressure. Some of these nerfs feel early, others, especially Natasha and Harper, may have gone too far. Now let's look at the Mercenary Buffs, because several forgotten units may finally have a real place in the meta. Now let's talk about the buffs, because several forgotten mercenaries may finally have a real purpose. Bonita gets 20% more attack and a massive healing increase. Butter Blank is replaced by electrocution on an ally. The numbers are better, but honestly I may still prefer the all blind effect. Shelby gets 50% more attack against an additional attack whenever an enemy dies or transforms. It is a buff, but compared to everything else in this patch it feels pretty minor. Wendy however gets a huge upgrade. Poison now triggers when an enemy attacks or is attacked, and it deals double damage when Wendy is on the second war. Poison damage also increases the HP on your front line and mid line, while commander healing is boosted by 30%. Wendy now brings damage, scaling and sustain at the same time. This looks extremely strong. Blanche also receives a major buff, especially at relation 20. She steals more attack, win more HP, and gains humanity before attacking. If she gets a kill, she keeps that humanity through the enemy turn. Relation 20 Blanche could genuinely return to the meta, and I cannot wait to test her. But the biggest winner may be O-Rinn. She gained 50% more HP, summons a much stronger Vigil, and now increases ally attack whenever an enemy takes infection damage or is repressed. The Vigil also buffs the team both when it appears and when it dies. O-Rinn is no longer just a support unit. She may now become one of the main scaling engines for the infection composition. My early winners are Wendy, Blanche and O-Rinn, but O-Rinn may be the unit that changes the most, and that leads perfectly into the biggest story of this patch, the return of infection. Before we get to the craziest changes in this patch, let's talk about the androids. I rarely feature them in my compositions because until now, their impact often feels too limited, but these 4 Reworks are genuinely interesting because each android now has a clear commander or archetype to support. Milika applies 3 stack of 5% vulnerability whenever an enemy attacks, then deals AOE damage on turn 3. With Lola and Moana no longer granting almost automatic kills, Milika could become a legitimate option for finishing weakened units and cleaning up the board. Amelia gained a very interesting defensive identity. Whenever a force shield breaks, she grants barrier to an ally up to 4 times per turn. On turn 3, she gives force shield to random allies and removes suppression. With Paige, this could become a real answer to Inferna. She also looks strong with Bernice, and apparently Lavonne Sentinel may not receive both force shield and barrier after all. Sally now increases ally attack whenever health siphon is triggered except for pacifiers. On turn 1, she places 3 health siphon stimulate and increases healing by 200%. I don't think this one is insane, but she could find a place alongside Quasar or Desiree. Finally, Skye increases ally attack whenever an enemy takes poison damage. On turn 4, she applies destructive poison with double damage against sentinels or enemy protected by barrier. So for everyone planning to play Ophidia with the newly buffed Wendy, okay, was clearly designed for you. These reworks may not define the meta by themselves, but they finally make that androids feel like real support tools instead of forgotten units. And now, we can move to the truly crazy part of this patch, Bea, Inferna, and the return of Infection. And now we reach one of the biggest winners of the entire patch, Bea. First, her attack is increased by 50%, but the real power comes from the rework skills. Previously, Bea applied Infection only when she attacked. Now, whenever any shooter attacks or is summoned, Bea applies Infection to up to 6 enemies. And on top of that, her Infection damage is increased by 50%. This means a shooter EV composition can spread infection across the entire board extremely quickly, without Bea needing to attack herself. Her second skill also returns in a much stronger form. Whenever a non-module enemy dies or whenever infection is triggered 5 times, including on module and the enemy commander, Bea deals direct damage to the commander. This ability was nerfed in the past because of how oppressive it became when Wanda was released. And now, with all those new infection tools available, the combo potential looks insane again. Hunter with Bea could be absurd, Inferna works perfectly with her, Wanda may return, and Agrat can now help infect the commander directly. Bea is no longer just an infection super, she could become a real win condition capable of pursuing both the board and the commander at the same time. This rework looks incredibly strong, and honestly, I'm extremely excited to test her, but Bea is only one half of the story, because the commander built O-Rinn infection has also been completely reworked. Let's talk about Inferna. Now let's talk about Inferna, because this is easily one of the most exciting reworks in the entire patch. Inferna gets a brand new passive and it changes a lot. Now, whenever Inferna is attacked, she infects the attacker and the nearby enemies. On top of that, all infection damage dealt is stored, and once per battle when Inferna drops below 25% HP, she heals for that stored amount. That is a massive sustain tool and it gives her much stronger identity in longer fight. Skill 1 is still very scary. Inferna still suppresses enemy on summon, but now there is an important extra detail. If a suppressed enemy takes infection damage, they still die, and that is where the combo starts looking really dangerous. Then we have skill 3, and this is where things become crazy. Inferna now applies infection to all enemy mercenaries, and every single infection trigger deals 200% damage to the enemy commander. So instead of being just a control commander, Inferna now looks like a real infection finisher with explosive combo potential. And when you start thinking about the new synergies, O-Rinn, Bea, maybe even more infection setup, these reworks start looking seriously scary. For me, this is a massive rework. Inferna looks stronger, more explosive and much more threatening as a win condition. So the real question is simple. Is Inferna back to tier 1? Is she once again the queen of the board? We are going to test that in Sunday's video. So overall, this patch is a really interesting one. We have some very important nerfs on the top side with Lavonne, Bernice, Natasha, Skye, Lola and Maddie. And at the same time we got some very exciting buffs and reworks with Bea, Inferna, O-Rinn, Wendy, Blanche and even the androids. What I like here is that the patch is not only trying to nerf strong things, it is also trying to create new options, and for me the biggest winner of the patch might honestly be Inferna. This rework looks scary, it looks explosive and it definitely deserves a full test. So now I want to know what you think. Which changes is the biggest in this patch? Is it the Lavonne nerf, the Bernice Nerf, the Bea Rework or Inferna's return? Let me know in the comments. And if you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to support the channel. And of course, this Sunday we are coming back with a full guide on Inferna and the Rework to answer the big question: is Inferna back to tier 1? Remember, the best composition is not the one that is meta, it's the one you master. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next time.